You don't come after a woman like me without consequences. I wasn't just going to let them destroy my name. I was going to find out who ordered the hit, and I was going to dismantle everything they touched. The morning after my illegal arrest, I showed up at the precinct. Not as a suspect, as an attorney. No makeup, hair tied tight, suit sharper than a razor. I walked past the front desk and straight to the internal affairs liaison. "Ms. Holt, you can't just watch me." They didn't know I'd been quietly recording every moment of the traffic stop. The smirk, the false accusations, the cuffs. I handed over the footage. "This is a formal complaint. And trust me, it's just the beginning." By that afternoon, I was digging through every public record I could find on Officers Garrison and Mullins. The two who showed up at my door. The ones who cuffed me. Garrison had 3 complaints for excessive force dismissed quietly. Mullins was once suspended for evidence mishandling. But what I found next, that's when everything clicked. Both of them had worked narcotics under Sergeant Deeks, a name that rang like a sour note in my memory. Deeks was a career manipulator, connected to half a dozen mysterious plea deals, the kind where the defense just folded. And now it looked like I was their next target. I needed backup, so I called in someone I trusted like blood, Tariq Monroe, a former cop. Now private investigator, black, brilliant, quietly dangerous. I want everything on Deeks and his squad. How deep? All the way. 2 days later, Tariq dropped a folder on my desk. Photos, reports, wire logs, surveillance. "They've been targeting minority attorneys and activists for years," he said, intimidation, planting suspicion. "But no one's ever fought back. Until now." One photo in particular made my hands freeze. A picture of Deeks shaking hands with Judge Rowley. The same judge presiding over the upcoming case against me. Conflict of interest? That was generous. This was conspiracy. I filed a formal motion to have Judge Rowley recused. Attached documentation. The court clerk's hands were shaking as she stamped the papers. I knew what I was doing was dangerous. But I also knew what they were doing was illegal. That night, someone slashed all 4 tires of my car and sprayed the word traitor across my building's entryway. I didn't flinch. I rented a car and showed up to court the next morning in a white power suit like a storm on legs. The courtroom was silent when I walked in. Rowley avoided my eyes, but he saw the motion. He saw the evidence. He had no choice. He recused himself. And just like that, the house of cards started shaking. But what none of them knew is that I had more than documents. I had a recording. One of the officers caught bragging at a bar. "She thinks she's untouchable 'cause she's got degrees. Wait till she sees what we got cooked up." That recording was about to go public. And the city? It was about to explode. I walked into that courtroom not as a former judge, not as the woman they tried to silence, but as a witness to something much deeper, a system that believed itself untouchable. And today I was the one holding the match. The gallery was packed. Reporters, activists, law students, my community. Even a few former colleagues sat in the back, watching nervously, unsure whose side they were on. At the defense table sat Officer Ray Collins. The man who had once looked me in the eye smirked and said, "Don't worry, Ma-am, we'll sort this out." Now he looked pale, sweating. His lawyer whispered something. He didn't even nod. He was already somewhere else, maybe in that pool of lies he thought would save him. The prosecutor, one of the few good ones left, stood. "Your Honor, we intend to prove a deliberate conspiracy, that the arrest of former Judge L. Daniels was not a mistake but a retaliation. Retaliation. That word echoed in my ears. It wasn't just my story anymore. One by one, the evidence came in. Bodycam footage mysteriously missing from my case? Turns out it wasn't deleted, just hidden behind an unauthorized tag. We found it. On that footage, you can hear them clearly. She's the one who blocked that internal transfer. You want to shut her up? This'll teach her. Then laughter. The courtroom froze. The jurors looked at each other. A woman in the back gasped. I stared straight ahead. No tears. Not anymore. They tried to bury me in silence. Instead, their own voices became my testimony. Then came the former cadet, a young officer who had once trained under Collins. He hesitated on the stand until he looked directly at me. They told us some arrests were political, that some people needed reminding who runs the streets. He swallowed. They meant her. My lawyer looked at me. I didn't flinch. By the third day, Collins looked broken. He didn't testify. He didn't look at me. He just stared at the table, like if he didn't move, this would all go away. But it didn't. Not this time. On the final day, the judge, a man I once mentored, addressed the court. This is a rare case, not just because of who sits at the defense table, but because justice was nearly crushed beneath ego, racism, and revenge. He turned to the jury. It's up to you now. They were out for less than 2 hours. When they returned, the silence was suffocating. The four women stood. We find the defendant, Officer Raymond Collins, guilty on all counts. I didn't smile. Not because I wasn't relieved, but because this wasn't victory. It was survival. Outside the courthouse, cameras flashed. A reporter shouted, "Judge Daniels, do you think justice was finally served?" I paused, looked at the crowd, and said, "No." Oh. But we made sure it wasn't completely forgotten. That night, I sat in my kitchen. Same teacup, same silence. But something was different. I wasn't just Judge Daniels anymore. I was a survivor. A symbol. A name they'd never erase. Because they thought they could frame me. But they never asked who they were really dealing with. I remember the first ripple. It wasn't an explosion, not a scream. It was silence, a tight-lipped courtroom suddenly holding its breath as Judge Daniels leaned forward. Or bring in the footage. The screen flickered. The gallery leaned forward. And then the bodycam played. Not Officer Collins' edited version, the full, uncut feed recovered from the department server by a whistleblower. Someone brave. Someone who knew the truth was rotting underneath layers of lies. On the screen, we saw everything. The arrest, the smirk, the slurs. The moment I identified myself and he laughed in my face. And the words. "You think being a judge protects you?" Gasps. Someone in the back whispered, "He's finished." The prosecution didn't even need to ask questions. The footage said it all. The falsified police report. The missing evidence. The aggressive threats. Collins wasn't just careless. He was malicious. Then the second ripple. My attorney stood up. She turned toward the gallery slowly, her voice low and deliberate. "This is not an isolated incident. It's systemic. Officer Collins is a symptom. Let's show them the infection." She called Officer Ramirez. He hesitated. "I don't want to be here," he said quietly. But he took the stand. And when he opened his mouth, the whole room froze. We were told to treat her like any other black suspect. Rough. No special treatment. Even when we knew who she was. You could hear the oxygen leave the room. That's when the cameras outside picked it up. The news vans were already rolling. Hashtags started flooding Twitter. People chanting outside the courthouse gates. Shiest judge. Justice for Daniels. The chief of police issued a statement that night, wherein Officer Collins disappeared. Literally vanished. No one could find him. But the case pressed on. Because now the question wasn't just about my false arrest. It was about the department, the DA, the mayor's office, every name connected to that report, every person who looked the other way. And as they looked at me from the bench, a woman they tried to humiliate, erase, imprison, I knew they saw the end of something. Their empire wasn't just crumbling. It was beginning to collapse. There are moments in life when fear has to take a back seat. This was one of them. By the end of the week, my name was being whispered in legal circles across the city, not as a disgraced lawyer, but as the woman who'd cracked open a sealed vault of police corruption. I wasn't backing down. I was just getting started. Tariq and I went public. We held a press conference outside City Hall. I stood behind the podium, pressed play, and let the world hear Officer Garrison's voice. She thinks she's smart. Law degrees don't mean nothing. We'll plant what we need to. Gasps, camera shudders, reporters leaning forward. I ended it with a single sentence. I was targeted for doing my job. I won't be silent. Within hours, I received a call from a number I didn't recognize. It was Angela Thompson, a defense attorney from the South Side. Ms. Holt, I saw what you did. I think the same officers planted something in my client's case. A 17-year-old boy, charged as an adult. He swears he's innocent? I met her the same night. The file she handed me made my stomach turn. Same pattern, same officers, same judge. This wasn't a bad apple. It was a rotting orchard. The more I looked, the more I found. 7 cases. Then 12. All linked by 3 officers, 1 prosecutor, and Judge Rowley. The city had built a quiet empire on false arrests and coerced pleas. They counted on fear, on poverty, on silence. They didn't count on me. The media frenzy had grown louder. Now the mayor's office was concerned. The police union was offended, and the precinct put out a limp statement about conduct under review. Meanwhile, I was receiving threats. Letters slipped under my door. Late-night phone calls with breathing on the other end. But I wasn't alone anymore. A coalition of lawyers, journalists, and families started calling themselves the Shield Breakers. We began organizing. Weekly meetings, testimonies, legal reviews. We weren't just fighting back. We were building a case. Then came the night I realized just how deep this went. I was walking to my car after a meeting. Someone stepped out from the shadows. A man in a hoodie. I braced myself. But he wasn't there to hurt me. I used to work the evidence locker, he whispered. I know what they did. I kept copies. I've been waiting for someone to come after them. He handed me a flash drive. Then he vanished. What I found on it broke the case wide open. Scanned reports. Tampered timestamps. Items listed as disposed that were never destroyed. Planted weapons. Falsified chain of custody logs. It was enough to blow this into a federal case. And yet when I tried to submit the evidence to the local DA, they refused to touch it. Said it was insufficient. That's when it hit me. They were in on it. So I went above their heads. Straight to the Department of Justice. I packaged every file, every photo, every statement. I included the flash drive. I sent it certified. With a copy to a journalist I trusted, one who'd been fired years ago for digging too close to the same squad. Now she had names, and she was pissed. And just when I thought I'd regained control, I was disbarred. Temporarily, they said, pending review of ethical violations. They were trying to shut me down, silence me through bureaucracy. But they didn't realize something crucial. You can take my license, you can ruin my name, but I already lit the match. And the fire was spreading. I always knew that wearing this skin meant fighting battles I didn't start. But I never thought the war would come straight to my doorstep wrapped in a uniform, flashing a badge. My name is Cassandra Holt, criminal defense attorney, Harvard-educated, fierce, relentless, and black. I don't smile when I walk into court. I don't play small. I don't take plea deals when I smell a setup. And apparently that's a threat to some people in this city. It started on a Thursday. Cold, bitter wind slicing through downtown Chicago. I was walking out of 26th California Courthouse, my heels clicking with purpose on the stone. Just won a suppression hearing for a black teenager falsely accused of armed robbery. No prints, no video, just he fit the description. Standard. I didn't know then that 2 officers had been sitting in the back of the courtroom, watching, listening, whispering. Their eyes followed me as I left. And their plan? It started that afternoon. The first sign was small. A parking ticket on my car, except I parked in a private, validated lot. When I called the company, they said no record of a citation. The officer's signature was just a scribble. I brushed it off. Then my assistant, Rosa, came in the next day looking rattled. Cass, there were 2 guys asking about you. Cops said they were investigating you for misconduct? Misconduct?
I laughed. What, being too good at my job? But something in her eyes chilled me. It wasn't a joke to her. That night, my apartment buzzer rang at 2:16 a.m. I didn't answer. A minute later, my phone vibrated. Chicago PD, we need to speak with you. No warrant, no explanation, just presence. I stayed quiet, watched through the peephole as 2 officers stood outside my door like vultures waiting on a carcass to stop twitching. And just like that, they were gone. But the message? Clear. They weren't just watching me. They were hunting. By the end of the week, rumors started surfacing. One of my old clients, a woman I got off on a technicality, was claiming I told her to lie under oath. The press didn't bite, but CPD? They saw an opening. They opened an internal criminal conspiracy investigation against me. No charges, no evidence, just whispers and pressure. My phone buzzed again. Unknown number. You should take a break from the courtroom MS before someone takes that robe away from you permanently. The line went dead. I stared at the wall, heat flooding my chest. They were trying to break me from the inside. 3 days later, I was pulled over on Lakeshore Drive. License and registration, the cop barked. No reason for the stop. My tags were clean. When I asked why, he smirked. You matched a vehicle involved in a narcotics drop. Step out, please. I refused. I started filming. His face changed. Anger. Embarrassment. Threat. Backup arrived. I was yanked out of my BMW, cuffed in front of traffic, humiliated like some low-level thug. They impounded my car, claimed it was evidence. For what? They didn't even tell me. I spent 4 hours in a holding room with no lawyer, no phone call, and no explanation. They let me out just before midnight. No apology, no paperwork. Just you're free to go. But I wasn't free. Something bigger was moving beneath the surface. The framing had begun, and they were betting on me cracking under pressure. What they didn't realize is I've been under pressure my whole life. I don't crack. I explode. And I was about to bring everything they'd built crashing down.